but I could not stop shooting this thing. This is some of the most fun I've had in all of 2025 is running this wheel gun. I could not stop shooting it. It was a real gas running this thing at the range. Hey everyone, I'm Brett, and welcome to Nightwood Guns. You know I'm excited to do a video when there's a revolver in it. As a resident revolver nerd around here, it is my pleasure to bring to you a 7-shot Optic ready combat magnum. And this one is made by Taurus. Now, the last experience I had with Taurus was about 7 years ago, where I had what might be the worst customer service experience of my entire life. Prior to that, my dad had a couple of Taurus judges when I was a teenager, and those were okay. And then even before that, my overall awareness of Taurus was kind of a junky brand. One of my local shops even kept, and they still have pictures of, probably 20 years ago, a Taurus, what would be the equivalent of a J-frame that came in, with the uncut barrel on there. So there's just this long, skinny barrel sticking out of this little snubby J-frame. They did not chop it. There's like 10 inches of barrel sticking out of the end of it. But 20 years have passed since then, and 7 years have passed since I had a bad customer service experience, and a lot can change in that time. However, I had kind of written the brand off until Taurus reached out to me and said that they wanted to send me a revolver that they're going to be coming out with that might be up my alley. And I said, "Are you sure?" And they said yes, they genuinely wanted an honest review of their brand new revolver. So here we are. Today I am reviewing the Taurus 66 Combat. For this review, I ended up putting 700 rounds through the Taurus 66 Combat, 500 of which were 38 Special, and 200 of which were 357 Magnum. I also did a couple thousand dry fire reps with this to see how it would hold up mechanically over that many cycles. So in today's video, I'm going to let you know how it performed overall, the cool features that are on this gun, along with the positives, and yes, the honest-to-God negatives. Today's video is brought to you by DPM Systems, creators of the recoil reduction system. So if you're looking for the best recoil spring assembly for any of your pistols, they make them for a lot of different models, and if they don't make it for your model, they might even be willing to work with you to custom make one and then offer it on their store. I've talked about DPM Systems many times. They come highly recommended from me. I've done videos on them in the past if you'd like to check them out. If you decide to hop into the world of DPM Systems, once you are done perusing their .com, be sure to enter my channel name, -guns, and save yourself some dough. So hopping into the review, right off the bat, when I took this thing out of the box, I was genuinely surprised at how much Taurus has upped their game since the last time I held one of these. On top of that, I was impressed by how in tune they are with the needs and wants of modern revolver enthusiasts. They nailed this thing. So this is double action only with a bobbed hammer, 7-shot cylinder, and optic ready. On top of that, we are looking at a 3-inch barrel and a tuned trigger and action. So before popping the optic on here, the iron sights that come on it are a trough rear sight that is milled into the frame, reminiscent of the Smith and Wesson Model 681, and it has a bright green fiber optic front sight. Overall, big fan of this sight picture if you just want to run it like a standard revolver. Their optic system is an RMSC plate, so that's going to fit the Holosun 407K 507K and the EPS carry, which is what I have on here. I bolted it on with blue Loctite along with the optic, and even though I was, busting 357 Magnums through this thing, never shook loose, so good to go. And the front sight is pinned in there, so you can swap it out if you want to, and it's also going to stay put. We also have an unfluted cylinder here, which on top of looking really cool, also adds some weight and heft to the gun that helps soak up that 357 Magnum recoil a little bit. The chambers are chamfered, which makes sliding rounds in there, whether it's a speed loader or one at a time, maybe even a speed strip, a piece of cake, they go right in and come right out. Oh, and by the way, if you're enjoying this video or have enjoyed videos of mine in the past, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That is the #1 thing you can do to support things around here. Hitting that thumbs up button also helps out a lot, but most importantly, dropping a comment down below is critical to the success of videos. So let me know what you think of the Model 66 Combat so far, and I'm curious to hear if you would trust your life with a Taurus product. Have they improved? Have they turned over a new leaf? Let me know what you think. Overall, this is a medium frame revolver, and that's my favorite revolver to carry, my main carry revolver being a Smith and Wesson Model 586 L Comp. Overall, this is just my favorite size of, for lack of a better phrase, fighting revolver. Like, you're not going to slip it in your pocket like a J-frame. Like, you're going to know it's on your body when it's on your belt, but it's still very concealable. And when you pull it out, you have the surface area on the grip to get a good hold of the thing, and you have that weight and heft so that you can run 357 Magnums through this thing controllably, or run 38s through this at lightning speed. This revolver just handles so incredibly well, from recoil to transitions between targets. it's dynamite. Right out of the box, I would rate the fit and finish on this thing as good, surprisingly good considering my past experiences with Taurus many years ago. It doesn't feel janky or cheap, it actually feels pretty well made. I think the aesthetics are also really good on this. We have some ribbing up here on the top of the barrel. Unfluted cylinder is of course pretty badass looking, and we have some nice lines just all across the gun. Overall, I think it looks pretty cool. It's got that combat magnum look. And if you doubted it for a second, they laser engraved combat on the underlug. Now, okay, that might be a little tacky, but considering they also make like the Raging Bull and the Raging Judge and stuff like that, having combat plastered on one of their guns isn't outside of their brand, and there could be worse words on this gun. I can't wait for the 44 Magnum version of this that's going to be called the Raging Combat. That's just a joke. I don't think that's happening, but if it did, I'd probably get one. The cylinder gap on this thing is acceptable. I'd say pretty good, not too close, but also not too far in that nice little middle zone. The cylinder release is very similar to Smith and Wesson. It does fit a little more flush to the frame, so it's not as positive hitting it, but it's not like I ever missed it. It still has good texturing and a dimple on there. I do prefer the Smith and Wesson one. It sticks out a little further. The ejector rod is like the absolute bare minimum of acceptable for me. This is about as short as you can get it on a 3-inch gun, and it's okay. That was one of my criticisms with the Kimber K6S, is they went with their super snubby ejector rod. So you can see that the Taurus is noticeably longer than the Kimber K6S, so this is good to go. And for those of you who don't know, the reason you don't want too short of an ejector rod, especially when you have the space to spare, like look at how much room they had on the Kimber to get a longer ejector rod on there, is because when you're reloading it, if you toss it over to your support hand and your support hand gets kind of too high of a grip on the cylinder and you go to hit the ejector rod, your hand can actually block it from depressing the ejector rod all the way, and the shell casings can get stuck or not come all the way out. But the Taurus was just long enough to be able to not have an issue, but it's right at the cusp. They made it as short as they possibly could. And to show you a comparison on another 3-inch gun, my 586 L comp, you can see that the Smith has a longer ejector rod than the Taurus by a little bit, and this is a very easy and fast gun to reload. They did a great job with the bobbed hammer on this revolver. That way it will keep a hammer from snagging on any kind of clothing in any defensive encounter. Like if you're in a hurry to get it out, a hammer is just something to snag on something. I personally don't mind it, and we'll touch a little bit on having a double action only revolver in some potential negatives. And it's not just the bobbed hammer. This gun is dehorned and melted all around. There's really nothing other than this optic hanging off of it to snag on anything, drawing from concealment. This comes with a Hogue Bantam grip, which is one of the better grips you can put on a concealed carry revolver. Personally, I don't really use the Hogues myself because the rubber is really grippy, which is great for controlling recoil in your hand, but for concealment, your shirt can kind of stick to it. If you reach for something on a top shelf and your shirt comes down, and kind of catch on that tackier rubber, but it still offers you that full 3-fingered grip while remaining concealable under your shirt, so certainly could be a lot worse. This is one of the better grips you can have. And speaking of feature sets, the one thing that's kind of missing from this as far as cool stuff on revolvers go is any kind of porting or a comp, like the 586L comp. This thing works so well at keeping that 357 Magnum recoil down a little bit, but on revolvers like the 66 Combat, I think the porting looks really nice. So if Taurus could port or comp a revolver like this, man, I think it would be the complete package. All right, now we talk about the trigger and the action because it is tuned from Taurus. This gun was really fun to run. There's a reason I put so many rounds through this gun. And I mean, so many rounds for a revolver. The 38 and 357 is really expensive, but I could not stop shooting this thing. This is some of the most fun I've had in all of 2025 is running this wheel gun. I could not stop shooting it. It was a real gas running this thing at the range. So the double action trigger feels lighter than your factory stock Smith and Wesson trigger, Kimber trigger, Ruger trigger. This thing is just lighter overall, and because of that, you can run this thing surprisingly fast right out of the box. Other than that, as far as reliability goes, I had no light primer strikes. The screws all stayed tight, which is new for me on Taurus revolvers. Again, my experiences are many years ago, but the screws always shook loose and the screws stayed tight on this guy. But as far as reliability and durability throughout my review process, this thing ran 100% and it's still in spec as far as functioning goes. as it sits. Another positive worth mentioning is that Taurus has a lifetime warranty on their revolvers. Now, I'm not sure how good their customer service or warranty service is nowadays. When I used it 7 years ago, it was rocky, but at least unlike a company like Colt, the lifetime warranty is actually there for this thing. So now that we've talked about the features and the positives, let's go ahead and hop into the negatives or potential negatives. So to kick things off, the Optic sits really high on this thing, and I realize that's mostly unavoidable for a revolver, just kind of the nature of the beast. This Optic took a lot of getting used to just because of how high it sits over the bore. Just presenting it to the target took a lot of getting used to. It felt like I was starting all over again when shooting dots, because I'd bring it up there and the dot wouldn't be there and I'd have to fish around for it to find it. Now that is 100% a training thing. You can muscle memory that right into the old noggin, but I figured it was worth mentioning for someone who's never run one before. I would be curious if Taurus could figure out a way to get that optic plate system to sit lower on the receiver, but I don't know, I'm not an engineer. I'm just here to pull triggers and give feedback, so. Next up, I want to talk about overall quality because, like I said, my Taurus experiences from many years ago, they were a little janky, but I can feel that Taurus is closing the gap with companies like Smith and Wesson and Ruger, considering those companies are now having quality control problems. So while those companies are slipping, Taurus is starting to up their game, especially in their fit and finish and their overall designs. They beat Smith and Wesson to a Performance Center 7-shot, 3-inch optic-ready combat magnum. However, it's not quite there as far as the fit and finish goes. Even with, Smith and Wesson's quality control problems, when you hold a Smith and you cycle a Smith and then you come over to the Taurus and you cycle the Taurus, you can feel the difference. However, the gap between the two has closed significantly since I last held a Taurus. Me saying that the Taurus is not quite as good as the Smith and Wesson is a huge compliment to Taurus, considering years ago I would have said, this Taurus is trash and don't even consider it. So earlier when I mentioned the trigger, I said it feels lighter than a factory, Smith and Wesson, Kimber, or Ruger. And it does feel lighter, which means you can run it fast, but it doesn't feel as smooth. When you pull the trigger slowly, you can kind of feel some hitches in there, some grinding, some squealing and squeaking. And if I put it up to the microphone, maybe you can hear the squeaking a little bit if I run it. So yeah, not really a smooth trigger, but again, didn't really affect my shooting performance at all. Since it's double action only, I just kind of ripping and tearing with this thing. The proof is in the pudding, and in this case, it's on the timer and on target, and this thing runs. But if you're someone who likes really smooth actions, here's the Kimber, for example. Just smoothly stacks right to the notch and then pulls. And then as far as Smith and Wesson goes, I had to go grab the only Smith revolver that doesn't have an action job on it, but this one is still very smooth. The Smith and Wesson, in my opinion, has the best action. Whoa. So different than the Kimber, because the Kimber has one stop at the notch, so you can stack it if you want. And of course, the Smith and Wesson, you can just run this trigger fast. It is smooth all day long, but this is lighter. It's easier to run this thing faster out of the box. Next up, after I put 700 rounds through this gun and dry fired it a bunch, I started to notice the very early warning signs of one of the chambers starting to go out of time. And I can actually tell on the ratchet which one it's going to be, so let me just pop it into position. So that one didn't go into time until the hammer actually fell. You can hear what it's actually supposed to sound like when it's cycling. Notch. 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 And then once again, the one that's starting to go out of time, we go nice and slow. No notch. Hammer just falls. And when the hammer falls, that's when it notches. So this thing is technically still in time, technically still in spec, and technically still runs. And based on my previous experience with revolvers, this will likely still be in time for a couple thousand rounds, maybe even more. But at some point, eventually, that one chamber is going to go out of time. And when you look at the actual ratchet on the cylinder, you can actually see some wear on the ratchet. So it seems like the ratchet's wearing a little faster than a Smith or a Ruger or a Kimber. But let me put it this way, this is not something I would worry about for a couple thousand rounds or more. And in case I didn't say it before, right out of the box I checked the timing on this and it was fully in time all the way around. So this is definitely from wear, just from running the gun both in live fire and dry fire with snap caps. And also on that same topic, I'm starting to see a little bit of mild peening on the cylinder notches. Again, this revolver will have a lifespan of thousands of rounds, but it is going to wear out a little sooner than a Ruger, for example. The only other quality thing that's really worth noting is that the lockup has some side-to-side play. So we're gonna pull the trigger, and then, check for end shake. There's not much, if any, front-to-back movement. That's the most important thing. But as far as side-to-side movement goes, let's take a look here. So just a little bit of side-to-side play, a little bit of turning play on the cylinder. That being said, the turning play on the Taurus is within acceptable parameters for a revolver. Now, I also want to touch on having a double action only revolver because there are certainly pros to it, but there are some cons as well. One of which is you lose the option of single action. So let's say you have a distant target, lightning strike hostage shot. That's one of the pros of having a revolver in many cases, where you can cock the hammer and just touch off a single action shot with extreme precision. With this, that option is gone. If you have a hammered revolver, you can run it in double action all day, and you have that option of the single action shot. But with a double action revolver, the choice has been made for you. There are no options. You are running this thing defensively, double action only. And of course, in most situations, that's exactly what you would need to do. So it's a trade-off. But if you have a revolver with a hammer, you can still run this thing double action all day long, but you can cock that hammer and take that precision shot if you need it. So I can't really believe I'm about to say this, but I do recommend the Taurus 66 Combat. I'll give it one thumb up because I'm impressed by this thing. It's still not quite one of the, Smith and Wessons or the Rugers or the Kimbers, and the actual feature set that it has is reminiscent of a Smith and Wesson Performance Center offering, that if you want an optic ready revolver out of the box, 100% this is the one that I recommend. In my mind, Taurus is more relevant now than they ever have been in the defensive revolver game. If you're still around, don't forget to make sure you're subscribed to the channel for more awesome content. Hit that like, thumbs up button if you enjoyed it, and most importantly, drop a combat. And most importantly, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the 66 Combat from Taurus. Would you trust and carry a Taurus revolver nowadays? Have they improved and turned over a new leaf? Would you trust your life with one? I'm curious to hear from you. The links in the description below are the place to be if you'd like to make sure that the channel sticks around. That's where you can find my Patreon. So grateful for my patrons. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. You can also find my awesome, thrilling short novels on Amazon, along with some channel merch. They're movie gun-inspired shirts. I think you'll like them. But other than that, it was great seeing you guys again, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm Brett, and this was Nightwood Guns. Nightwood out.